And I'm back! This time with something a little different, as this is just something I can't seem to let go of in my head, which is mainly the timeline of the extermination and Lilith's overall involvement with it, since season 2 dropped a lot of lore on Lilith's whole resist protests, and Charlie even giving us this line.
My mom never wanted violence, peaceful protest.
What do you mean by that?
And with the added timeline, thanks to Katie Killjoy, we learn that the extermination has only been in effect for 7+ years. So what exactly was it that Lilith was protesting and why? So enjoy my crazy ranting and raving as I try to make sense of this clusterfuck of a minefield and constantly slightly hint to timelines being important over and over again. So timeline-wise, we know that the extermination didn't happen till after Lilith started her protests, as we have Sarah say that hell was uprising and that's why she agreed to Adam's idea. So this basically means that Lilith's protests were not exactly about fighting back against the exterminations, as they were not happening at the same time, and prior to all of this as well, it's hinted that heaven never even bothered with hell since even before Lilith and Lucifer's fall, due to it being originally cut off from Earth. Plus, angelic steel only came from the angels themselves, so again, this shows heaven didn't have any interaction before Lilith's protest, because sinners wouldn't have any fear of permanent death due to no angelic weapons. So again, what exactly was Lilith's whole protests even against? Like, Charlie even mentions that they were peaceful protests, and I've seen a lot of people question Charlie's memory of her mother and father due to the storybook, but we know Charlie is roughly 200 years old, and when Lilith was active, it was only 7 years ago. So Charlie wasn't a child back then. She would have seen it and remembered it fully. We even know from the playbill that she met Vaggie 3 years ago. So again, she would have been a full adult during Lilith's protest time. And I mean, maybe the protests took a while to get going, but I doubt heaven would spend hundreds of years debating on what to do. Plus, with the info of Vox recording everything, it's quite possible that there is videos of Lilith's protests, so this whole public, activist, mysterious storyline thing with Lilith again makes no sense with all these factors coming together. Plus, based on her posters in the pilot and show, Lilith had concerts to rally the people. So is that how the protests themselves were considered peaceful? But then it's like, why did heaven get freaked out by it if they're not really doing anything? I mean, I know Charlie makes it seem like Lilith has this power to empower demons, but I don't really think they mean it in a literal sense. And it's also weird for Charlie to not realize her mother is basically doing an uprising when she's witnessing it. Like, how do you not realize that your parent is causing more harm than good because of the outcome? And I know Charlie blames her father for all of this, but it's like, if the timeline is to be believed, then Lilith doing all of this caused a problem. Adam suggested what they could do, and Sarah agreed, and then Sarah told Lucifer what the plan was, and he just agreed because for some reason Lilith is now missing. So it's like there's so much going on that feels like that's trying to hide the confusion and trying to make Lilith and Charlie look better than what they are, when it's like, no. And I know the show's not over, but the information given just makes the possibilities on what it could be very confusing, especially with the storybook making it seem that this was something that had been going on a lot longer than 7 years. Plus, I mean, having the Queen of Hell possibly protest against, I'm assuming, how hell is run, which, like, your husband is the king of hell and basically made the kingdom of hell, who are the ones running hell, and like in the show it shows that they just really suck at ruling or just don't care about much, but it's like they do have the power to make things better, so why protest against heaven specifically when you have like all these royals, angelic beings, the 7 sins, like you have all this. I truly don't believe that it's a resources thing, as we see hell is quite well off. I mean, look at Rosie's town, and she's been here for a long time. Even Zestiel lives well. Yes, they're both overlords, but still, the people in Rosie's town aren't overlords and they still live pretty well themselves, so it's not that. And I don't think the resources argument is like specifically for the more unlucky sinners, if you really want to call them that, since again, they're in hell for a reason, which, off topic, but I still find it really funny that fans push both ideas as a gotcha moment to actual criticism of how it doesn't make sense. Because again, the logic of the show itself shows that hell doesn't necessarily suck all that much, resources wise. I mean, even with overpopulation, like we've been told, it still seems like most, if not all, the sinners are doing relatively well. Again, resources wise, obviously the more bottom of the barrel sinner is going to have a bad time with a more higher ranked sinner messing with them. But still, resources wise, everything seems okay and enough that protesting to resist to specifically heaven couldn't be the reason. And again, Lucifer and the other sins and the other royalties have the means to make things better. So it's not a heaven needs to give them resources kind of thing. It just, Plus, I'm also curious about Lilith's protest phrase specifically being resist. Like, what the fuck does that mean? Resist what exactly? Because, like, what exactly could this allude to? I mean, maybe it's resist your sin, since maybe Lilith had a similar idea to Charlie's. I mean, it is kind of implied that Lilith had the same views as Charlie, but we don't know if she also believed sinners could be redeemed. Plus, with Sarah saying the sinners were uprising and her full distaste for Lilith when Lute brought her up, it stands to some reason that the protests were more focused on heaven. So the phrase resist seems to be more towards heaven. But again, if the exterminations didn't happen till after the protests started, then what exactly were they resisting? And to bring it back to the book, it's kind of implied she was only empowering hell itself with her voice to build hell and make it more livable, which if that's the case, that's fine. I mean, hell had no order or much going on due to being cut off for so long. So yeah, it makes some sense for Lilith and Lucifer to take over and make best of the situation that they're in. But to keep going to the point of freaking out heaven still feels off. Like, we already know that Charlie was basically sheltered from all the horribleness that was going on with the human sinners. So they obviously had the ability to create a nice life for Charlie, themselves included, so like to keep going makes no sense. Maybe for Lilith, because she's human and the sinners are human, so there's like some kind of camaraderie, but at the end of it, it doesn't make sense to keep going and pestering heaven in a way that makes them feel threatened, you know? Like, without this extra stuff, it seems like Lilith was honestly protesting that some, if not all, sinners in hell should be let into heaven for some reason, which is just stupid. And how Charlie thought these were peaceful protests, again, makes no sense due to Heaven's response. Like how was what Lilith was doing not anything but intimidation? I mean, Vox even tells us that sinners rallied to her and that they had no issues following her, but for some reason, they can't do that for Charlie, her daughter. And if Lilith and Charlie had somewhat the borderline of the same viewpoints, why are sinners not flocking to Charlie like they did Lilith? So with all of that, it kind of shows that Lilith's tactics were probably not as noble as Charlie thinks they were, and if Lilith was truly trying to get sinners into heaven, then she sure didn't think it through if she had no intention of changing the sinners' ways for heaven to be okay with. I mean, we see that the people who follow Vox were only interested in the hotel because of Nifty killing Adam and just killing overall. So yeah, if this is the same group that was following Lilith, I don't think heaven would be okay with letting killers, cultists, cannibals, and a bunch of YouTube unfriendly words into heaven and without anything happening. Plus, Lucifer even says Charlie was the first person to come up with this idea of redeeming souls. So clearly Lilith's whole thing wasn't even close to Charlie's thing at all. Like, again, I know the show isn't over, but there's just so many plot holes. And honestly, hands down, my biggest guess and the closest thing that I can agree to is that Lilith just did all of this to get into heaven for herself and had no intention of actually helping sinners in any way. I mean, to some degree, we see in the flashbacks, it was Lucifer who gave Eve the apple, and Lilith is like off to the side, so maybe she wasn't actually involved, or like she could have been the lookout for all I know, but like the scene implies that like Lilith was a little not 100% rock solid in this plan, and due to just being in the room was probably wrongfully sentenced. And I mean, all she really did was fall in love with Lucifer. Like, that's her biggest sin, so to speak. I mean, we don't even know if she ate the apple herself. So, but you know, that still doesn't really add up to like what exactly her whole protest thing was even for or about, other than being selfish. Like, the only way that I can see this being a thing is that Lilith was truly selfish about wanting to go back to heaven, and I feel that only really works if the theory of Lilith actually being disguised as Rosie, and the Lilith we see who actually started the protest was Eve in disguise. Then that right there makes sense for why it doesn't make sense. Oh, and if the root of evil thing ends up happening in the story, I'm gonna be so unhappy, because the actual story is way better, trust. But like, if that does end up being true, then like the whole point of the protests, Charlie, redemption, the whole thing just feels stupid. like when it's all spread out, laid in front of you, it all just feels so stupid. But yeah, that's all I got. Y'all, see y'all next Wednesday. Bye. God.